So the big tax question is this: how do wealthy people keep their money working for them when selling their business, real estate, or other highly appreciated assets without paying hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in tax? What if we, as business and real estate owners who have poured blood, sweat, and tears to growing our wealth, and who didn't hire expensive tax attorneys and CPAs to map out an exit strategy, knew their secrets? Instead of recreating the wheel, why can't we just model the way they deferred 30 to 50% in tax, paid off debt, funded their next business dream, and most importantly, leave a financial legacy to give to the causes we believe in most? What if their secrets weren't complicated at all, and you just need a guide who is a few steps ahead of you? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swarts, and welcome to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to grow your wealth. I'm your host, Brett Swarts, and each episode I am joined by some of the best real estate, financial, and wealth advisors in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration, so together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He's a dynamic entrepreneur, business owner, and visionary who's built a diversified, profitable health and fitness enterprise. From humble beginnings, he has nurtured a multi-service, multi-location, award-winning business. Boston A's list top 5 in personal training, with a value proposition focused on high-quality client service. He has leveraged his leadership, communications, and motivational skills to ensure that his customers are satisfied and his employees are high-performing and engaged. He's also a trusted consultant to small business owners, relying on the competencies that he has developed throughout his career to help them level up. And he is here to drop a bunch of knowledge, a bunch of vision, and also give us some insights into how to level up our business. Please welcome to the show with me, Micah Logan. Micah, how you doing?
Doing great, Brett, man. It's good to see you again.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be on your show, and it's even more of an honor to have you now on my show. With that being said, would you give our listeners a little bit more about your background and your current focus?
Yeah, sure. So I actually went to school for psychology, nothing like what I'm doing now. And as I was coming through the ranks in the health and wellness industry, I worked in various settings. I worked in smaller boutique settings. I worked in more corporate-like health and wellness settings. I worked for medium-sized companies. And then over time, I eventually developed my own thought process and how I wanted to structure a business. And I opened my own business back in 2005. And fortunately for me, it failed. And 13 months later, and I say fortunately because, as you know, as an entrepreneur, your success comes from your education often comes from failure and not from success, right? Success is a poor teacher. And after that, I went back into the workforce, and I went to work for someone again. And then a few years later, I started the process of opening up more facilities again. And this time I partnered with the physical therapy company, and it was great. I had a great relationship with them. I still do. And However, I was kind of held captive to their own business strategies themselves. They had a retraction of their business, and I had 4 locations. And then because of that retraction, I ended up having to close 3 of them. And the 4th one ended up just not working out because it wasn't the one that was my primary operation. And so what ended up happening after that, I actually got really fortunate. I opened up a brick and mortar downtown Boston, and I ended up just creating this business model that works really, really well. And I'm excited to announce that in the first quarter of 2021, I've decided to franchise that prototype business, and I'm excited to see how that actually how that pans out. So that's a brand new business for me, even though I'm in the business of selling that business, or I will be, as opposed to focusing on the widgets that we reproduce, which is basically exercise, relationships, things like
Beautiful. So you're scaling up by franchising it. And for those, by the way, before we get too deep into the episode here, Where
Sure.
can they find those opportunities if they are going to be applied to be to maybe franchise what you're doing there?
Yeah. So we're still working out and mapping out the website, but when it's up, it will be meld, MELD, franchise.com. That's MELD, meldfranchise.com. And they could find all the information there. And the new franchise concept is going to be called Meld Fitness and Wellness. And it's a wonderful, wonderful concept that I can't wait to introduce to everyone
Beautiful,
in the world in
beautiful. We'll have to
2021.
have you back in about
Yeah,
a quarter to see how everything's going, or halfway through the year to see how everything's going.
I love
So
it.
before we dive into some of the strategies and thoughts on how you've successfully built your business so far, and
Sure.
some of the you know learning experiences you had from the first failure, I want to take a step back. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, Mike. I believe these gifts are, some people call them superpowers. I believe they're God-given gifts, and these
Yep.
gifts are given to us to be a blessing to others, right? And so I'm
Hmm.
curious, maybe before all the entrepreneurial stuff, and maybe back in the college days, maybe in high school days, what was that
Yep.
one or two gifts you believe you were given, Micah? And how does that help how you help others today?
Well, first and foremost, I definitely agree with you that these are definitely God-given gifts. I think that's important to state. But I believe that the gifts that I was given was the ability to focus on a goal and to be able to create. For whatever reason, I have this brain where I never stop learning. And so I've been able to develop the ability to create ecosystems and structures and get rid of inefficiencies and create efficiencies. And, I feel like I've been given the ability to actually become a world builder. And that's what kind of led me into franchising, which is the thought that, by my ability to create systems and processes and to kind of rid a business process of its inefficiencies. Like, it really helped me to refine my business, which obviously took years of lesson learning and just in general business pragmatics. But also, like, it helped me to be able to teach these skills and abilities to people who would want to go into business for themselves.
Excellent, fantastic. Let's dive right into that. I mean, what are the top,
Sure.
one or two secrets to creating or recreating an ecosystem with inside of a business to get rid of efficiencies?
Well, first and foremost, I think that everyone who starts a business and who is trying to create systems that become scalable, leverageable, and then ultimately sellable, and then they end up calling you, is I think that business owners or entrepreneurs, they need to be able to write everything down that they do. And oftentimes entrepreneurs, what they do is they keep a lot of information in their heads. They don't really share it. Not that they're being selfish, but they just have a hard time trying to explain what exactly it is that they do. And one of the things that the franchising process has taught me is that you have to actually kind of go into your head and really sit down and think about, how is it that you do everything? How do you turn on the light switch? How do you open? How do you close? How do you manage cash management? How do you manage projecting out marketing activities? How do you budget for the next year? How do you staff? What's the most appropriate staffing procedures and policies to use? So writing out everything is super important. I think that's the number one thing, is just writing down everything that you do. And the second thing that I think that second way that business owners can and entrepreneurs can get rid of inefficiencies is by keeping their operations as lean as possible, learning how to somewhat grow through cash as opposed to growing through debt and finance, which, although I have no problem with people leveraging up in their business a little bit, but the reality is, I think that if you can learn how to manage on a lean budget and through cash, I think that you're doing something pretty magical there. It's not always possible, especially at the beginning. And given that I'm franchising, it kind of almost sounds contradictory, because most of the people who would purchase the franchise probably are going to leverage themselves a little bit. But I think by doing that, you're able to create for yourself profitable behaviors that end up leaning themselves to wider and more profitable ventures in the future, because you have the ability to actually, keep yourself constrained in your spending and how you're dealing with your budget.
Yeah, my thought on that is it's almost like you're working out your operations muscles, right?
Yeah.
And if you're taking on too much debt, or if debt's becoming your solution to that, or your not even really solution, but the band-aid over what's bleeding, right?
Right.
Then you're really not getting to the core of what needs to be done, right? So instead of instead of get the, I guess, I don't want to say the diet pill, right?
Mhm.
You got to get below and actually get to your numbers and make sure that, is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think so. So I read a book by Mike Michalowicz, the author of Clockwork. He also wrote a book called Profit First. And what I find interesting about the concept of profit first is that regardless of what your operating expenses are, now what I'm going to say kind of defies convention and in GAAP principles, general accounting principles, right? Um, which is basically you always find a way to actually pay yourself. Even in the startup phase, you find a way to pay yourself. And after you pay yourself, and he has a chart. He has a chart based off of what kind of revenue you're taking in is how much you should pay yourself versus what you should spend on your expenses. And I just find the principle interesting that you should always seek to pay yourself, not so that you're comfortable, so that you're not actually looking around at doing other things while you're trying to build a business. And I think that there's something there to that. And his system of profit first is kind of like the envelope system, but I think it works for startup businesses. What happens is startup businesses, they're so distracted by how much money they're not making and that they have to go and pursue other opportunities just to kind of keep their lights on, that because they're not paying themselves. Whereas if you had some of that opportunities to kind of think about how you wanted to deploy your capital, if you had to be a little bit cheaper, if you had to second guess something, if you had to re-strategize, maybe do a little more guerrilla marketing that's cost a little less to be more effective, create better partnerships and personal relationships in order to drive referrals. It kind of drives those behaviors when you have less to spend on marketing and certain other capital expenditures.
Yeah, very well said. Likewise, I've read those books. I think that there's a Pumpkin Plan, there's Clockwork, and then Profit First,
Mhm.
and they're very challenging, right? Because
Yeah.
if you follow it to a T, which I think it's wonderful. It's almost like you need to me, at least in my brain, the way my brain works is as like an entrepreneur, driver, personality, expressive. I need to hire that analytical person, right?
Mhm.
And then to like just run that. I mean, I know that's what I
Right.
put in my brain. I need to own that and then take responsibility and align that with team members, which I have. I'm delegating and hiring more folks. But can you speak to just that, overcoming the driver personality per se versus getting into the nuts and bolts and making it all work?
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that. So every time I test on a personality test or personality spectrum or something like that, I'm a Myers Briggs. I'm an ENTJ. I'm an A-type personality. I'm an 8W7 wing on another test. I'm a dominant A-type personality on every single test I take, and it just gets worse. So I should stop taking them because it's all the same thing, right? But what I find is people maybe like you and I who have the ability to build ecosystems, these worlds, the structures of businesses, which oftentimes terrible managers. And I think that you would kind of get into this with your point, which is that if you start focusing on too many of the day-to-day details, there are people out there who excel in middle management and day-to-day details, and those people should be running the business because they have the opportunity to run. You drop the playbook as the coach, and they run the play. But for you as a world builder, you have to kind of keep a singular focus on what your long-term vision is, and then create those steps by which your business can grow, generate revenue, and so that you can actually train and bring people along so that they're happy and healthier in their career, and they want to stay there. And kind of creating a coaching tree like in football, I think is really important, and having a plan for that, because if you're not helping your employees and maybe your co-founders, whatever the case is, grow professionally and personally when they're employed by you, which should be a part of your plan, then I think you need to kind of revisit what your plan is, because you want people to kind of slowly develop over time. So people who are more detail oriented have the ability to do that because they can focus on the day to day. And what ends up happening is, as a type like personality extrovert, that you're just kind of like a world beater. When you start focusing on the details, you get exhausted by like midday, or like a third of the day passes. You're just like, dude, I have no energy to podcast. I have no energy to like build a business. It really is, and it's hard to explain. And maybe you feel like this too, but when you focus on so many details, like middle management details during the day, like you are so drained, like you're wiped. You know?
100%, right? I mean, that's just, hi, my name is Brett, and I'm drained by all the middle management details. I'm here to find help, right? I
Exactly.
feel like it's like, And then when I find that amazing hire, which I have an amazing one, she's our executive assistant, and
Yeah.
so now I'm like, hey, how you doing? And she's like, well,
Right.
a little over. I'm like, well, go hire another one of you and like just keep doing that. Like whatever
Yeah.
you need. Like I like
Yeah.
if I lose you, like it all
Uh-huh.
comes down.
Yeah, no, it is amazing, and it helps you to focus on in Clockwork what he calls the serving your queen bee row, which is basically um, focusing on what you're best at, and a lot of people call it, different things. The Pareto principle, which is 20% of your customers are going to produce 80% of the sales for you. In work, if you were in like actual the deployment of like business and entrepreneurism, if you reverse engineer that Pareto principle, 20% of whatever produces 80% of the results, you need to save your whole 5% at what you're good at for what you do really, really well, and then the 95% you have to outsource. And if that starts to reverse itself, then you start to just get that drain, and it's hard to like be creative and continue to try to push the envelope in your business, and to figure out frankly how you want to grow, you know.
Okay, so we got to focus on Micah laser now. Ready? Okay. So Micah,
Yeah.
how do you help me? Right?
Uh-huh.
How do you help us as we're listening? Anyone
Yeah.
who's an entrepreneur, maybe a type A personality, driver, expressive. How do you help me to focus on the top 5% and then
Yeah.
outsource the next 95? And in particular, I guess it could be like budgeting and like paperwork and like
Oh.
just the day-to-day, like the processing of the deals, right?
Yeah.
How do we do that?
It's brutal. Well, first and foremost, you have to make a hire. I always think that it doesn't matter what business you're in. So, in your case, obviously in finance, if in my case, health and wellness, I'm also the CEO of a manufacturing company. So even in that case, it doesn't matter what business you're in. Your first hire should be an assistant, I believe, before you hire a technician. And that also goes kind of toward the E-Myth, if we're just throwing random entrepreneurial books out there, to create what Michael Gerber calls the franchise system. Now, we're not talking about the franchise system in terms of the actual franchise right now, but what we're talking about is systematizing a small business so that it grows in maturity and so that your business can actually develop. And so the best way for an entrepreneur who has a crazy mind, like you and I, and have a hard time kind of reining ourselves in, is you have to hire someone who can organize your thoughts and your behaviors first, because that your business is going to grow so fast by having somebody who can take how you think and what you say and distill it into a stream of action and things that need to take place. Or even if you have the ability to distill your thoughts into like written form, if they're not actually getting done because there's no one to actually take those and run with it, then you're losing money and you're losing time and you're losing business, frankly. So the first thing I would say is to hire an administrative assistant. And nowadays with this, global economy, you can hire a virtual assistant, and virtual assistants function really, really nicely. And just a few tips for that. I would say that virtual assistants come from all over the world. And so if you're listening to this podcast in the United States, you want to make sure that your virtual assistant speaks English really well and that they dictate really well, that they can write, that they have good grammar, and that they understand basically, we all have idioms and things related to where we live. So they should understand like basic US idioms and things like that. But once you find a VA who's qualified, and if they're out of the country, can understand like language and all that other stuff, I think it's really important to make that hire so that they can take some stuff out your plate, including having them answer emails in your email account for you, which I think it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so well said. And we're distilling my thoughts to written form. I love that. Organize my thoughts and behavior first, right? Someone who's going to be able to systematize, make that hire the assistant. And so I have that one, and I think this one. I think at this point I need to double. I need to just say, hey,
Yeah,
find someone who's like you, and then double. So would you
right.
double that person, or would you find an assistant to the assistant to, or is it what were your thoughts there?
So I think the framework is, hire the assistant to help you organize the 95% of things, of the details that you don't need to be focused on. And then you start to offload 70% of the things that people can do of yours 80%. So if you can find somebody who can actually do what you do, but do it 80% as good as what you do, you have to realize that in the business world, often that's good enough because 100 doesn't exist in the business world. And so what I find is that it's often that not that entrepreneurs and small business owners or whomever you are, that they can't find these people is that they often don't trust people to offload to because they feel like they don't do it as good as them. And that is a problem, because if you continue to feel that way, then you'll never actually offload, the stuff that you need to offload. And so I would go virtual assistant or assistant, in-person assistant. I would offload most of the detailed tasks that are kind of like more repetitive tasks and don't necessarily require a lot of um, critical thinking. And then I would hire that person who can deal with the widget, whatever your widget or specialty is, that can actually do the critical thinking afterwards, and then offload about 75%, 70 to 75% of what you do that's critical thinking. You can offload to them, because you want to get into the position where you're just making decisions about what to do, either project based or 30,000-foot view decisions on the business itself. And then as that person starts to get busy, then you give them an assistant, if you're still a small business at that point, or you create employees to handle some of those tasks that trickle down from there.
Okay, so I get all that and I hear it. I understand. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But how did you, Micah, personally
Mm-hmm.
take what the knowledge and put it into action to do that? And did you have coaching? Were you in a mastermind? And, besides reading the books, walk us through just your transformation there.
So I travel a lot, because of masterminds and coaching and stuff. Some of the stuff that you said, seminars. I spend thousands of dollars a year on education for myself, continuing ed. I spend a lot of money on books. You can't. My bookshelves are off camera, but they're all over the place in here. Um, but what I can tell you is that I took available of all the free time when I normally would be sitting there. As an example, before I even decided to franchise, something like uh, maybe 12 years ago, what I did was I was on a flight back from California to Massachusetts, where I live. 6.5 hour flight, six, depending on the jet stream. And instead of just going to sleep, I started thinking to myself, well, one day I may franchise, or one day I may just want to sell the business. And I remember sitting in a presentation where it was just like, well, if you're going to sell your business, the money is in the operating manual and not just in your funky business that has no exact plan. So what I started to do is I started to think, okay, what do I do every time I enter the facility? How do I want it done? And I wrote it down. If I was going to go in and start at the beginning, in the morning to open up for our customers, how do I do that? And I slowly started writing down, open the door, turn the light, turn this on, turn that on. And then I started kind of stepping through each and every phase of operating the business, as crucial as grueling as it was. I stepped through each phase to decide, okay, well, okay, on this phase, now what do I do? And I wrote it down, and I stepped through an entire day. And then I did that with every single position in my business. And then once I did that with every position in my business, I then said, okay, now globally, how do I make decisions about my business and for my business that helps to move my business forward? And then I wrote down that stuff. So even on the higher level. So I took myself out of a technician's role, and then I started making application and writing down contextually what I did, in making decisions even higher. And then once I did that, I started to say, well, when have I engaged marketing firms, and what have I engaged them for, and what have I needed them for? And then I wrote that down as an example of my higher level decision making. And so I just eventually was able to get to, I would say, about 95% of I never use the term, the amount 100, because in the business, really, because your business, you have to save that 5% for times when you go to a seminar or you speak to someone who's another entrepreneur, and you hear something that helps you to evolve your business. And so 95% of my business has been documented. It's well documented. I can pass it on to someone who I don't even know to run it today, tomorrow, and you can just step in and then just run it. And it comes from slowly, systematically over time, thinking about every single position in the business that existed, and thinking about, if I were to grow, what would be the ideal position, what would be the ideal person I would want in there to help propel the business forward, and write down what I would want to have them do. And then I wrote down job descriptions for everyone. I wrote down what I thought that it could make for profitability and all the other stuff. And I just wrote down, I just took it all out of my brain and put it on paper.
Amazing. So you did the work. to,
Yep.
in the smallest detail for every single role, everything that you were doing in the business, you're writing all of that down and
Hmm.
documenting it. And you go, hey, for the entire day, if I was this role, which is, let's say, transaction coordinator, or I was the one doing the budgets, or I was the one doing
Right.
the podcast, and you're just going to write down each step and then document all that and then say, okay, who's the hired? And I'm just going to give that to them. And I'm going to trust them. I'm going to train them and coach them up to about 70, 80%, because they're never going to be 100%. And then let them just run with it. And now I'm going to move on to the next one, make the next hire for that. And the next one. Is that a fair summary?
That's exactly it. And it sounds so stupid writing down something as simple as flip this switch or turn this dial. But frankly, when it's all together, it is amazing um, what kind of effect simple instructions have on a person. It builds confidence slowly over time, and it allows them to actually take ownership of what they do. And if you read the book Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, taking ownership for employees is important. You give that to them when you actually provide them with the ability to handle a job in the right way.
Amazing. So, is there a digital resource to help to document and write this stuff down? And then what's the one book? Would it be the E Myth? Would it be the Pumpkin Plan? Would it be Clockwork? What would be the one if you say, hey, just start with this and this to start that process? What would it be?
So the process digitally is Google Drive because it's amazing. And if you have an assistant who can work with you and kind of fact check or grammar check your what you're writing in there, that works too. But the reason why Google Drive is nice is because no matter what device you have, you can always log in and edit it. And so whenever I had free time to edit what I was doing over the years, remember this is 12 years, and you don't have to take 12 years. I just did it because I did it in times when I had spaces and travel and availability. Um, you just document it. You write down everything you do, and it's always live. It saves instantly, and so you never have to worry about your hard drive crashing. So I recommend Google Drive because it lives in the cloud and it's secure. In terms of the book, the E-Myth is literally the small business Bible, and I think that every single business that owner that owns a business or entrepreneur, even if you're an entrepreneur and you have interest in multiple different arenas or channels where you make your money, you need to read the E-Myth because you should still systematize how you invest and how you actually deploy your capital and your money. Having a system for that is just as important. And even investors get bought by other investors. So I think it's really important to systematize everything you're doing in business because frankly, at the end of the day, you'll have nothing to worry about in terms of if I were to take 6 months off, will my business still grow or is it going to crash? You know?
Beautiful. Amazing. Wow, you're like the business doctor, Micah. You said you did psychology in college, right? But you're doing psychology all over the place here. So with business, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think business is psychology because it's part of your life. The first thing that I coach when I'm doing small business consulting with all the businesses is this, and I think it's very simple. What kind of life do you want to lead when you're older? If you feel like you want to spend time with your family, if you want to actually have more time with your kids, with yourself, if you're not married, if you want to travel, whatever the case is, you need to figure out what you want to be doing later in life, and your business should serve your life and not the other way around. There's too many people whose lives are serving their business, and that's an abusive relationship because the business is just taken from you. You need to kind of flip the script, and in order to flip the script, you have to start creating systems, a systematized way to deploy your business. And it's hard, especially when you've been doing business for a long time. But you got to be honest with yourself and kind of think about where you ultimately want to be, and that will guide like how you actually deploy your thoughts around building your business systems and things like that.
Amazing. And Micah, do you help people do that? Because I want to make sure if we do, I want to point them to that website or that next action step for maybe part of your service, or what is?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I do. So I do these. I think they're pretty cool. They're called hot seat coaching sessions with people. So it's like 30 minutes. You call me up, and then after you call me, then we kind of just take a look at your business. It costs there's a cost to it. It's like about $150, but we spend a half an hour literally ripping apart your business. And so what we do is, okay, we get on the phone or Zoom or whatever, now Zoom, of course. And it's like, well, what are the biggest problems in your business? And then a person may say marketing. A person may say, well, decline in revenue. I have a hard time retaining employees. I have a hard time actually growing or scaling my business. And so one of the things we do is we take a half an hour, and it's a hot seat. You can ask me any question you want, and we just kind of pick apart your business and go through how I could actually help you to rethink what's happening in your business. What are some possible solutions to some of the issues that you're struggling through? And I do have a link for that I can share with your listeners.
Yeah, just share it right now, and we'll also put it in the show notes. But what's the link?
I'm not sure. I have to. It's a Micah-Logan.com /hot seat coaching.
Okay, I'm actually going to share my screen right now for our listeners. So I'm on Micah's here. So I'm going to go to the home, Micah. Here we go, and then I'm going to / and I'm going to put say it one more time. Coaching, hot seat.
Hot seat coaching.
Hot seat coaching.
And watch it be wrong. There may be a dash in there.
Let's find out. But she's going to put in the show notes, and we're going to have that. But go to Micah-Logan.com, and then you can also contact him there more. Micah, that is fantastic. Are you ready for the hot seat? I mean, are you ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready. I'm ready for the hot seat too. Let's go, baby. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Gosh, I feel like I've been on the hot seat because I got to improve. I got to level up my business game. But here's the lightning round. All right. So knowing what you know now, Micah, if you go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you would make sure you would do?
Get a mentor. Get a business coach.
Beautiful. What's the one book you've recommended the most or gifted the most in the past year?
E-Myth. I've gifted it 5 times.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Good question. If we're talking about business, the best advice I've ever received is to measure your results in business like you have to report to investors. So you should always provide some kind of assessment to whomever your customer base is. You should always be surveying your customers to see. It's all about refining your target market, making sure they're happy. So you got to treat the results in your business like you're trying to provide an investment report.
Excellent. Favorite, or give us a mobile or digital resource you recommend for your business.
Yeah. So one of my favorite resources, free or paid?
Free or paid, doesn't matter.
Okay. So one of my favorite resources for my business, I think, is Mint. It's like a financial software. And you can kind of break everything into categories. It's supposed to be a personal finance software, but you can actually just put all your business stuff in there. Another one is Personal Capital. I think it's called Personal Capital. I'll look. Yes, it is. It's called Personal Capital. And what it does is it actually takes all your business investments, your assets, like if you're in the stock market, you can put in your cars, you can put in, and it creates a net worth for you. And it creates like a whole bunch of different metrics. So you can actually see how your net worth is growing over the years and then measures it. It reads like my Vanguard account and things like that. And so it really is nice because you can see how you're actually, when we're adults, our scoreboard is our balance sheet and our profit and loss statement. So like it really helps to keep that top of mind.
Beautiful. What are you curious about right now?
Frankly, I'm curious about the nature of the franchising industry. It is with the coronavirus, it's estimated that something like 30% of businesses are going to go out of business. And people may be saying, well, with some of the restrictions and shutdowns, why are you franchising a health and fitness business right now? And I think frankly it's because I think that the world is going to shift and change. I think it's going to be a time where people actually leave businesses that they feel like are uncertain and they want to gravitate towards brands that are more stable. It's the reason why Amazon and other well-known online e-commerce retailers have seen significant increases in consumer pay, because people during uncertain time gravitate towards brands. And so I'm curious right now to see how and what becomes of our franchise brand, mainly because I want it to become this trusted brand in the US. I want people to make that association. And so I think that to me is very curious.
Yeah, I love that answer. Last question here, and then we'll wrap it up. So after all your success, all the people you've helped, and the story of failure, success in business, and learning so much in between, how do you stay centered, Micah, in your values, and how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new goals?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I'm going to show you.
Yeah, love it.
I have two phones,
Oh,
and I didn't always have two phones. And when I didn't have two phones, I guess it sounds like a really simple thing, but I was always getting buzzed in text message, emails, all that stuff. And, frankly, it was draining just knowing that the messages were coming in. It was hard to turn it off. And I have two kids and a wife, and my wife has been extremely patient, extraordinarily patient over the years with the growth of my business, the lack of success in some areas, and then the rebounds and stuff like that. I think that being able to separate your work life and your personal life has tremendous intrinsic value and allows you to have some semblance of sanity. I do not do business on Sunday as a rule, mainly because we worship on Sunday, but also spend time with the family, relax, watch football with the kids, watch a movie. You have to control your life as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner. And I know that there's this in the ether, there's this almost like religiosity to the thought that entrepreneurs, the hustle, the grind thing is like an 18-hour a day thing where you don't sleep, and sleep is for losers, and you can sleep when you're dead. But, for me, having kids growing up, family has become infinitely more valuable. The time you spend with your kids, more valuable, with your wife, valuable. And I think that I'm not naturally a person that would have paid attention to those things if I wasn't married to my wife, who it forces me to pay attention to stuff like that. And so over time, I've understood the value of taking time out for the family, doing things together. I'm on a couple of boards, in town for my kids' school. I engage with the school system. I do things outside the industry and outside work, and I involve myself in the personal life of very strongly of, like, my kids' education and stuff like that. And so that's very important. It allows me to disconnect. Now, stuff is still stressful, but I think there's tremendous value in having a life outside of the hustle and the grind. And you should take actionable, I think, hard system steps, i.e., two phones, to separate one from the other. Have a day or two when you either do not disturb your iPhone, because that's why it's there. And you you can separate yourself. And frankly, don't answer text or emails until the afternoon. That's the other thing.
That's really good. No text or emails in the afternoon. Okay.
If it's an emergency, they'll call 911. I truly believe that.
And then on your two phones, I'm curious. So you just like Monday through Friday, you get the work phone, right? And then you just you leave that at the office or whatever, turn it off, and then now personal phone you're always carrying it with you, right? And then you pick it back up on Monday morning. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I keep my work phone on me Monday through Saturday morning, and then on Saturday morning I maybe like mid morning I shut it off for the rest of the weekend, and so I don't get messages again until Monday morning. And so if I'm looking up the internet, if I'm just and I know it's only like a day and 3/4 a week, but that has a tremendous impact on my mentality, because I think that over time, like just like when you're eating, you can be full. My brain gets really full sometimes. And so taking that mental break and just knowing that, for instance, I can be on the internet on my personal phone and I'm not going to get a ding when I'm on there that something needs to be done. There's that stress is not there. Yeah. And I find myself less and less thinking about how many messages I have to get back to. And so if I go on vacation, I only take the personal phone too. So it's a complete week where I don't have anything, and I do not have my work email on my phone at all. And the only people that have this the personal phone number also are people who are in a very small circle. So,
Hey, so much wisdom there, right? You can write a whole book on that strategy right there. That is fantastic. So, Micah, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to encourage you to keep using the gifts and talents you've been given to bless others and help others in so many ways: leadership, business growth, franchising. I mean, amazing. By the way, you can find Micah Logan at micah-logan.com. That's micah-logan.com. And with that, I also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. And using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, or hiring someone like Micah to help you level up and scale your business and get your work-life sanity back is the best way for you to grow your wealth. With that, please rate, review, and subscribe if we can help you who, if you're selling something, a primary home, a business, investment real estate, deferred capital gains tax, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, get the free ebook, and also schedule your 15-minute consultation at no cost. We appreciate you. Thank you, everybody. Bye now.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.